Emma lay awake in her small Seattle apartment, staring at the faint glow of streetlights sneaking in through the curtains. The room was quiet except for the steady patter of rain against the glass, yet her heart felt anything but calm. She had always loved the rain. But tonight it sounded like a reminder of how heavy her life had become. The breakup with Ryan left her empty in ways she couldn't explain. She had tried to fill the silence with music, late-night movies, even long phone calls with friends. But nothing seemed to ease the ache. Nights were the hardest. The loneliness pressed down like an invisible weight, and every time she closed her eyes, memories of him would resurface: his voice, his laughter, the way he used to kiss her forehead and promise that she was his forever. But forever had ended. Emma rolled over and buried her face into the pillow, trying to fight the sting in her eyes. She whispered into the dark, as if speaking to the walls might help. "I just want someone here. Just someone who won't leave." Her voice cracked and her chest tightened. The silence that followed was unbearable. At the foot of her bed, Max shifted on the rug. He was her golden retriever, 4 years old, loyal in a way no person had ever been. He had been with her through everything from her move to the city to the lonely nights when she had no one else. She could always count on his gentle eyes and the way he leaned against her legs whenever she cried. Tonight, though, she had expected him to stay on his rug, giving her space the way he usually did. But then, without warning, Max rose and jumped onto the bed. Emma flinched at the sudden movement, her tired eyes opening wide. He never did that. Not once in all the years she'd had him. Max was well-trained, respectful of boundaries, almost too polite for a dog. Yet here he was, climbing onto the mattress as if he knew something she didn't. He patted closer, circled once, then pressed his warm body against her side. His head rested gently on her chest, his deep brown eyes staring up at her with a softness that made her throat tighten. For a moment, Emma forgot how to breathe. It wasn't just a dog curling up beside his own, it felt like something more, something unspoken. She let out a shaky laugh, brushing her fingers through his fur. "Max, what are you doing?" she whispered. He didn't move. His weight was steady, comforting, grounding her in a way nothing else had. Emma felt a tear slide down her cheek, and Max shifted closer as though trying to catch it. She stroked him again, her voice trembling. "You know, don't you? You can feel it." The warmth of him seeped into her, chasing away the cold emptiness that had taken root since Ryan left. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel completely alone. Max's sudden closeness was more than a simple gesture. It was a message, a reminder that even in her darkest hours, she was still loved. As the rain thickened outside, Emma closed her eyes and tried to let the comfort of her dog's presence settle her restless heart. But deep inside, another thought stirred a strange feeling she couldn't shake. Why tonight? Why now, of all nights, did Max decide to break his usual habit and climb onto her bed? It felt almost like a sign, as if he knew something was coming, something she couldn't yet see. And as she lay there with his steady breath against her chest, Emma realized that the night was far from ordinary. Something was shifting in her life, something that would change everything she thought she knew about love, loss, and second chances. For now, though, she held on to Max, letting him be the anchor she desperately needed. The storm outside raged on, but in that quiet apartment, Emma found a small piece of peace without knowing that this was only the beginning of a night she would never forget. Emma lay still, her hand resting on Max's warm fur, her thoughts tangled between exhaustion and surprise. He had never once broken the invisible rule of staying off her bed. And yet here he was, pressed firmly against her side like he belonged there. His chest rose and fell in rhythm with hers, his eyes heavy but watchful. As if waiting for something she couldn't see, she turned her head, studying him in the dim glow of the lamp across the room. "Max, what's gotten into you?" she whispered. He blinked slowly, his tail thumping against the blanket once, twice, then settling again. It wasn't excitement, it was something calmer, deeper. The silence of the apartment wrapped around her. Yet the weight of his presence filled the room in a way words couldn't. Emma felt an ache in her chest. She had spent so many nights reaching for someone who wasn't there, hoping for arms to wrap around her, for a voice to reassure her she wasn't as unlovable as Ryan's departure had made her feel. But instead, it was Max, her steady companion, who answered the cry she hadn't said aloud. Her hands slid along his back, her fingers combing through the familiar softness of his golden coat. She could feel the heat of his body, steady and grounding. And the thought struck her, maybe he sensed what she had tried so hard to hide. Dogs had a way of reading emotions, of knowing when something was broken inside you. But this felt different. Emma's breath shook as she whispered, "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" Max shifted, lifting his head just enough to nuzzle against her chin before settling again. The gesture stole her words. She closed her eyes and let the tears fall silently, not in despair this time, but in release. For a moment, she thought about Ryan again. How many times had she cried into an empty pillow, wishing he would hear her? But tonight the ache didn't sting in the same way. Tonight she realized it wasn't Ryan's absence she needed to mourn any merit. Was her own heart that needed permission to heal. And Max, without knowing it, had given her that first permission. The rain grew heavier outside, tapping harder against the glass. Emma listened, her hand never leaving Max's fur. It was strange how quickly the room felt different. How a dog's decision to climb onto the bed could change the weight in her chest. She felt less like she was drowning, more like she was floating, even if only for this single night. But then a thought crept into her mind, sharp and unshakable. Why tonight? Why, after all these lonely weeks, had Max suddenly decided she couldn't be left alone? It wasn't like him to break habits without reason. His instincts had always amazed her, how he could sense a storm before it came. How he barked at strangers long before she even noticed them. Maybe, she thought, this wasn't just comfort. Maybe it was a warning. The idea sent a chill through her. She opened her eyes and glanced at the door, the shadows stretching long in the faint light. Nothing moved. The only sound was the storm. Still, her heartbeat quickened. Max seemed calm, but his choice to stay close had unsettled her in ways she didn't want to admit. Emma shook her head and pushed the thought away. "Don't start imagining things," she murmured. She tried to laugh, but her voice was too thin, too shaky to convince even herself. Max's ear twitched at the sound, and he pressed closer, as if reminding her he was there. She leaned her cheek against the top of his head, closing her eyes again. "Okay," she whispered. "If you want me to believe you know something I don't, I'll trust you. Just don't leave me, okay?" For a long while, she lay like that, breathing in the faint smell of rain on his fur, feeling the rise and fall of his chest against hers. Her thoughts slowed, her body softened, and the tears finally stopped. She hadn't realized how badly she needed this simple act of comfort. How healing it could feel just to have anyone beside her. And yet, beneath the calm, the question lingered. What if Max's sudden closeness wasn't random? What if this was more than a dog sensing sadness? What if he was preparing her for something she didn't yet know was coming? Emma's heart tightened again, but she didn't move. She couldn't. The comfort outweighed the unease. She told herself she would worry tomorrow. Tonight, she just needed to hold on to this feeling, this unexpected grace her loyal companion had given her. She pulled the blanket over her shoulder. Max still pressed firmly at her side, and let the sound of the rain try to carry her into sleep. But deep in her chest, a strange certainty had already taken root. Something was coming, something she couldn't name. And Max Sweet, steady Max already knew. Emma had almost slipped into sleep when Max stirred. His head lifted from her chest, ears pointed, eyes alert. The sudden change pulled her back from the edge of rest. She opened her eyes to see him staring toward the door, his body tense but his tail wagging softly. "What is it?" she whispered, brushing his fur. He didn't move back to her side. Instead, he jumped off the bed, padded across the floor, and sat by the door, waiting, watching. His tail tapped against the rug as if he knew something or someone was there. And then she heard it. A knock, soft, hesitant, but clear in the stillness of the night. Emma froze, her breath catching. Midnight, who would knock at her door now? The sound came again, a little firmer this time. She sat up, heart racing, clutching the blanket close around her. Max gave a quiet bark. Not sharp or angry, but almost welcoming. His tail wagged harder, and he glanced back at her as if encouraging her to open it. Emma's chest tightened. Fear battled curiosity. The rain outside roared against the glass, thunder rumbling faintly in the distance. And here she was, alone in her small apartment. Someone knocking at her door in the middle of the night. She slid off the bed and pulled her sweater around her shoulders. Her feet felt heavy as she crossed the room, each step echoing in the quiet. "Who's there?" She called, her voice trembling more than she wished. Silence. Then a voice, low, gentle, familiar. "Emma, it's Daniel." From next door, she blinked, her hand hovering near the doorknob. Daniel, her neighbor. She had seen him in the hallway so many times, always polite, always offering a smile. But their conversations had been short, nothing more than passing words. And now, here he was, standing outside her door in the middle of the night. Emma hesitated, her mind spinning. Why would he come now? What could possibly be so urgent? She turned to Max, who wagged his tail even harder, his body shifting closer to the door as though he knew Daniel was no threat. The dog's calmness steadied her enough to unlock the door and pull it open just a crack. Rain spilled in with the wind, carrying the faint smell of wet pavement. Daniel stood there, his dark hair damp, his jacket soaked at the shoulders. His expression was soft, almost apologetic. His hands tucked into his pockets as if he didn't want to seem imposing. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, his voice low so it wouldn't echo through the hall. "I know it's late. He paused, eyes shifting past her toward Max, then back to her. "I heard him barking. And I don't know. I just had this feeling you might need someone." Emma stared, her grip tightening on the doorframe. Her heart beat faster. But not out of fear. Out of something she couldn't quite name. Concern, surprise, a flicker of warmth at the thought that he had noticed her. That he cared enough to stand in the rain just to check on her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain and Max's excited tail thumping against the floor. Finally, Emma opened the door wider. "You're soaked," she said softly, almost automatically. "Come in." Daniel stepped inside, careful to wipe his shoes on the mat. The warmth of the apartment wrapped around them. And for the first time in weeks, Emma didn't feel like the silence was crushing her. It felt different. She closed the door, her hands still trembling slightly, and turned to face him. Daniel stood there awkwardly, his damp jacket clinging to him, his eyes searching hers as if trying to gauge whether he had made a mistake. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said. Sometimes you get this feeling, like someone nearby isn't okay." Emma swallowed hard, her throat tight. She wanted to say something to explain how strange the night had already been. How Max's behavior had unsettled her before the knock even came. But the words tangled inside her. All she could manage was a quiet, "Thank you." Max broke the silence, circling Daniel with happy barks, tail wagging wildly. He nudged at his hand until Daniel crouched down to pet him. "Guess he approves," Daniel said with a small smile. Emma laughed softly, the sound surprising even herself. It had been so long since laughter felt natural. She leaned against the edge of the counter, watching as her loyal dog greeted the man she had only known from a distance. The sight filled her with a strange warmth. One she didn't know how to carry yet. They moved to the kitchen table, sitting across from each other. The lamp cast a soft glow between them, highlighting the rain still dripping from Daniel's hair. Emma wrapped her hands around a mug of water she hadn't touched in hours, the heat grounding her. For a while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy. It was fragile, like something waiting to be unwrapped. Finally, Daniel leaned forward, his voice quiet but steady. "I know it sounds strange, showing up like this, but I didn't want you to feel alone tonight." The words struck her harder than she expected. She lowered her gaze, blinking back sudden tears. Alone, yes, that was what she had been for weeks. Yet now, in this moment, she wasn't. And it wasn't because she had begged or reached out. It was because someone had simply noticed Max curled at their feet, okay? His tail still tapping against the floor like he was content with the way things had unfolded. Emma glanced at him, then at Daniel, her heart unsteady but hopeful. Maybe Max had known all along. Maybe his strange behavior wasn't just comfort, it was preparation. The knock on the door had not been random. It was the start of something she didn't understand yet. Something that might finally give her a reason to believe in connection again. And though the storm still raged outside, Emma felt the first spark of calm she had been chasing for so long. The rain had softened outside, but its rhythm still tapped against the window as Emma and Daniel sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The lamp between them glowed softly, casting a golden light over the room. Emma's fingers rested on the rim of her untouched mug, her eyes lowered, but every few seconds she glanced up at Daniel. He looked different in her apartment than he did in the hallways, often warmer, less of a neighbor passing by and more of a presence she could feel. Daniel leaned back slightly, studying her with quiet concern. "I hope I didn't cross a line," he said, breaking the silence. "I wasn't sure if I should knock, but something in me just wouldn't let it go. I felt like you needed someone tonight." Emma pressed her lips together, trying to steady her breathing. The kindness in his words cut deeper than she expected. She had been strong for so long, pretending her loneliness wasn't breaking her down night after night. And here was someone admitting he had noticed. Someone who wasn't afraid to say he cared. "You didn't cross a line," she said softly, her voice unsteady but honest. "Actually, I'm glad you came." Daniel gave her a small, relieved smile. Max shifted at their feet, letting out a low sigh as he curled comfortably between them, his tail brushing against their legs. It almost felt like he had been waiting for this moment, pushing them toward each other. For a while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. This was alive, carrying weight neither of them needed to put into words. Finally, Emma leaned back in her chair, her hands tightening around the mug though she never lifted it. "It's been hard," she admitted. "Harder than I ever thought it would be. Nights like this, it feels like the walls are closing in." Daniel's expression softened, his brows furrowed slightly. "I know that feeling," he said. "Loneliness has a way of making even the smallest spaces feel too big." His words sank into her, steady and true. Emma looked at him carefully. "You felt it too." He nodded, a hint of sadness flickering in his eyes. "After my divorce, nights were the worst. I'd come home and the silence would be louder than anything. It takes time, Emma. More time than we think it should. But it doesn't last forever." Hearing him say it, hearing that someone else had carried the same weight stirred something inside her. She wasn't the only one who had broken, the only one who had lain awake wondering if life would ever feel full again. And in that moment, the space between them didn't feel so wide. Emma blinked back the sting of tears, her voice trembling. "I thought I'd never stop feeling empty." Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "You won't feel like that forever. And you're not empty, Emma. I can see it. You're just waiting for something real again." Her heart beat faster, his words touching something she hadn't wanted to admit. She glanced down at Max, who lifted his head, his tail thumping softly as if agreeing with Daniel. Emma reached down to run her fingers through his fur, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you're right." Daniel smiled faintly, watching her. "I don't mean to say too much, but I think Max knows what I mean. Dogs are good at knowing when their person is ready for something more. Maybe that's why he wouldn't leave your side tonight." Emma looked at Max again, a lump forming in her throat. She thought back to the way he had climbed onto the bed without warning. The way he had pressed against her chest like he was trying to heal something inside her. And then the knock at the door, Daniel standing there, as if Max had somehow known she needed him. Her lips curved into the smallest smile, though her eyes were damp. "It's almost like he planned this." Daniel chuckled softly. "If he did, I owe him a thank you." Their eyes met, holding for longer this time. The warmth in Daniel's gaze steadied her, pulling her away from the shadows she had been lost in for weeks. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she was standing on something steady, something safe, asterisk.